Hey there, my little lean lifers. Welcome to this episode of the show where we are talking all about muscle soreness, the DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. Is it a case that it's all about no pain, no gain? As those bros would say, think back to those Arnie days when you were watching Pumping Iron, the documentary. And if you're too young to know that reference, get your ass on Netflix and watch that documentary. Anyway, is it all about that feeling of soreness? That feeling that you've kind of earned that badge of honor, that you've worked so hard in the gym, you've put in so much effort that you're super sore the next day? Do you actually seek that feeling? Is that the sign that that workout was good? Or is it actually just an indication of not much really in the way of progress? And actually it's kind of this false target to be aiming for, and actually you should be thinking about something completely different. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode of the show, giving you that clarity, giving you that insight that you want. Now, I know a lot of you may get to the end of the podcast and maybe, just maybe, you switch off maybe 1 or 2 minutes before the very end of the show. And don't worry, I don't love you any less if that's the case. But what I want to tell you about right now is in those 2 minutes at the end of the show, I'm going to tell you about something really fucking cool. So just make sure you hang on just right to the bitter end. Anyway, let's talk about muscle soreness and let's get cracking and give you the answers that you want to this question. So is it a case that you want to be sore at the time of training? Is it a case that, after leg day, you want to be stumbling around like Bambi on ice because that's the sign of a good leg day workout? Or is it a sign that it's the days after, that's where you kind of really feel that benefit? The muscles have a chance to kind of have that shock to the system, absorb that, and then go, fuck off, tighten up, and then just say, right, bang, you can't even go to the toilet, you can't even have a shit without needing the help from a carer and an adult. Okay, now, without going into too much of the whole bro science behind this, let's say basically the answer isn't as straightforward as you might think. You might have come to this podcast thinking that, well, Simon's just going to say, is it really that important? Then he's going to go, blah, 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 blah. No, it's not. Now, it's not that simple, my friend. So actually, joke's on you. If you are a beginner, here's where the sort of lines get a little bit blurred. If you're a beginner and you're new to the gym, any new training stimulus is going to cause you some level of soreness. That's a fact, that's a given. This is just going to be a completely new experience for you and your body, and therefore you're going to be using muscles you never even thought you had in places you never thought existed. So anything new at that sort of stage is going to have some sort of effect. It's going to have some sort of soreness, probably for, at least in that session and maybe 1 or 2 days thereafter. So it's important for you as a beginner to build that volume slowly, because the one thing you don't want is to be sore for 3-4 days, because that just means that you push the volume too far for your current level of skill and your current level of training age. So there's no good jumping in on freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger's training program when this is your first kind of year of training. It's going to be too advanced, too much volume, too soon. You're going to get too sore and you're going to compromise all of the subsequent workouts that you may have planned for that week. So if you're a beginner, you're in that sort of realm of your fitness training, it's probably not a good idea just to base everything on soreness and bang that volume as high as you can. My advice, stay within your limits. Focus on technique. Don't get overzealous. Focus on getting the movements right. Focus on movement patterns, getting comfortable. Then as your skill level increase, by all means, start to increase that intensity. So the yardstick for me would be, if you're sore in the session, that's normal. If you're sore 1 to 2 days after, that's normal too. If you're not feeling any soreness as a brand new beginner, then maybe you're doing something slightly wrong. It could be a technique thing, or it could be a fact that you're just not pushing hard enough and you need to man or woman up a little bit and put a little bit more effort in. But you just got to kind of tread that line of not going too far, too balls deep too soon. Okay, so beginner out of the way. What happens if you're an intermediate or slightly more advanced when it comes to the gym? So this is where it becomes more of a balancing act. If you're in this situation where you get zero soreness from any workout ever, that's a sign that probably something's not quite right. Now, it could be that volume is too low. It could be that as you're gaining experience, you're gaining, your training age is growing and your knowledge about training is growing as well, is that you may be able to recover from more volume quicker than you did when you first started. So it could be a case that, okay, now I need to start ramping up that volume. Now I need to start increasing volume so that I get enough volume in to make the adaptations that I want, to make the muscle growth that I want. But there is a but. You need to also consider technique, because just because you don't feel sore doesn't necessarily mean that that's related directly to volume. It could be, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is. Think about your technique. Think about, when I'm working this particular exercise, am I feeling it in that muscle? Because if you're trying to do chest exercise, you can't feel it in your chest. You're trying to do a lat exercise, you can't feel it in your lats, then chances are you're not going to feel sore in your lats or your chest, because you can't activate that muscle and you can't use that muscle effectively for that exercise. So it's this balancing act you have to strike between, is it a case of more volume, or is it a case of more technique, more execution, or is it a bit of a blend of both? You're going to have to be the one that makes that decision. You're going to be the one that has to decide. Now, the flip side of that whole thing is, if you're fucking sore all the time, if you have a workout and you're instantly sore and you're sore for like 3-4 days after, that's probably a sign you're doing too much volume. If you can't recover from what you're putting your body through, that's not the optimal way to train. You might think that, okay, the best way for me to train is to absolutely smash myself into the fucking ground every single workout, every single day of the week. Maybe have a rethink on that one. Maybe that was the approach of Neanderthal man, but in the modern age, with what we know about training, with what we know about how to build muscle effectively, you do not need to do that. You do not need to put your body through that extreme all the time. So you need to find that level of volume that really works for you. The one that gets you that soreness on a regular basis. Doesn't have to be every single workout, but on a regular basis, you're feeling that soreness, you're feeling it working. That's a good sign that you've kind of hit that volume target that's right for you. But also remember, it could be an execution thing, because you could put a whole ton of extra sets, a whole ton of extra exercises into your program, but if fundamentally you can't make that muscle work, that's just junk volume. It's just a waste of fucking time. So recapping, basically muscle soreness can be a sign of a good workout, but it's not the only sign of a good workout. If you are a beginner, guaranteed you're probably going to get some level of muscle soreness somewhere along the way, because this is a completely new experience for you, a completely new training stimulus. Those muscles you never even thought existed are going to get a workout and you're going to feel it. But if you're feeling sore for 3, 4, 5 days after that workout, you know you're doing too much. Pull it back, take it easy, and build up that intensity. If you're the intermediate or advanced, you need to strike that balancing act. If you're never feeling sore, probably a sign that either your execution is off or you're not doing enough volume. Vice versa, if you're always sore all the time and barely able to recover from your workouts, it's a sign you're probably doing too much volume. So strike that balancing act. Don't necessarily use soreness as the only measure of your success, but treat it for what it's worth, as an indicator of your training volume and your ability to execute exercises effectively. Cool. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Now let's flip back to where we started, where I was going to tell you about something really, really fucking cool. Now, when you're listening to this, I am going to be balls deep in a calorie deficit. That's right. I said it. Balls deep. I am balls deep in that calorie deficit. I am dunking my testicles straight into a lack of calories. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, I wonder what it's like for Simon to go through this process of leaning down, stripping all that body fat. I wonder what he goes through. I wonder how he does it. Now, if you're wondering that question, I've got the answer for you, because Sculpt with Simon is a thing. Over on Facebook, we have a private Facebook group you can access where you can get all the information about how I'm going through my fat loss process whilst busting 6 nutrition myths that probably have you tied up in knots right now. I'm going to give you the warts and all journey, the good, the bad, the indifferent, how I train, how I diet, what I eat, what I supplement with, the whole works. You get access to absolutely everything. And did I mention that it's all for free? All you need to do is click the link that's in the accompanying notes of this podcast and you will get full access. Okay, you maybe missed a week or so, but you can still catch up. There's probably 11 more weeks to go by the time you listen to this, which is cool. And if you can't be bothered to click the link, maybe just come and visit me on Instagram at iron_paradise_fitness. Drop me a message and I'll tell you where you can find the link, because even if you're lazy, I will still help you out. But for now, all I'm going to say is thanks for listening to this episode. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next one.